It started like most discoveries do, quietly in the background. No explosions, no breaking news. Just a small team of tired scientists working the night shift at an observatory in Chile, staring at data they didn't fully understand yet. Dr. Asha Malik, a 42-year-old astrophysicist who hadn't slept in 18 hours, noticed the anomaly first. It looked like a strange pattern in the gravitational readings coming from near Saturn. At first, she thought it was just a glitch. Space is full of noise, radiation, waves, particles. But this was too clean, too smooth. It was like someone out there was pressing their finger on a piano key. Over and over again, "Are you seeing this?" she asked her colleague Ryan, handing over her tablet. He squinted at the screen. "That's not natural." "No," Asha said, her voice dropping. "It's not." They checked it again and again across different telescopes, different satellites. The pattern was real. It wasn't a star. It wasn't a black hole. Something artificial was causing the disturbance. Within hours, Project Horizon, a global space research program jointly run by the United Nations and the last few spacefaring countries, was alerted. By the end of the week, every major observatory on Earth was tracking the anomaly. They called it the ring, a term borrowed from the way the energy waves echoed in circular motion, like ripples in a pond. Then came the real surprise. The message. It wasn't immediately obvious. In fact, it took several days of running it through translation algorithms and comparing it to Earth's own communication systems. The code was buried deep inside the gravitational waves like a letter folded into the folds of space itself. 3 short pulses, 2 long ones, a pause, then again. It repeated every 48 minutes. When they finally realized it was a signal, a deliberate one, everything changed. Governments met in secret. Scientists stopped talking to the press. Project Horizon's main control room was locked down tighter than a military base. No one wanted to say the word out loud, but everyone was thinking the same thing. We are not alone. What they decoded was terrifyingly clear. The message was a kind of map, a scan of the solar system showing Earth's location marked in red. Lines extended outward like the branches of a tree. The markings didn't make much sense until someone overlaid it with galactic coordinates. That's when it hit them. The message wasn't just a scan. It was a report. And the solar system wasn't the first target. It was just next. "This isn't a message to us," said Dr. Malik during one of the emergency meetings. "It's a message about us. Someone out there is taking notes on Earth, studying us, preparing for something." The signal had been sent by a massive object hiding just beyond Saturn, cloaked behind one of its moons. A few drones were sent to investigate, but they all vanished. One lost contact. Another sent back only static. The third exploded before even reaching the moon's surface. That's when the panic started. People around the world began to hear whispers, rumors about visitors and invisible ships. News outlets tried to deny it, but too many questions were being asked. Internet forums exploded with theories. Some said it was aliens coming to help. Others thought it was the end of the world. At the United Nations, the debate was different. Should Earth try to respond? Some said no. If they don't know we exist, let's not wave our hands in the air. Others argued the opposite. They've already found us. Staying silent is more dangerous. Eventually, they agreed to send one message. One clear, simple broadcast that could reach any ships or stations in space, using every known form of communication: radio, quantum, light pulse, even ancient Morse code. The message read, "We are aware of your presence. We are not a threat. We are not seeking conflict. We hope for peace." It was transmitted from every satellite, every deep space antenna, every frequency Earth had ever used. The hope was that if they were listening, they would understand. People on Earth held their breath. The message was meant to be a gesture of peace, but also a warning. Not a threat, but a boundary. Earth was saying, "We see you. We are ready," but the thing is, Earth wasn't really ready. Technology had advanced fast, yes. There were smart cities, self-repairing roads, climate-controlled agriculture. After almost destroying itself through war and environmental collapse in the late 21st century, humanity had slowly pulled itself back together. A global government now existed, not perfect but functional. Poverty was shrinking. Wars were fewer. But when it came to space, Earth was still a child playing with tools it didn't fully understand. The furthest manned mission had barely reached Mars. The Moon had a small research base. Everything else was drones and satellites. So when they sent that message into the stars, they were hoping the ones listening would be wise, or kind, or at least curious. What they got was silence. For 2 weeks after the transmission, there was no response. No signals, no movement. The anomaly near Saturn remained still, quiet. Some began to hope it was gone. Maybe they'd scared it off, or maybe it had never been a threat. Then, just as the world was starting to breathe again, telescopes picked up something horrifying. The object near Saturn had disappeared, but now there were multiple signatures, dozens, hundreds. They were moving in perfect formation, slowly, steadily, toward Earth. The energy readings were off the charts. The ships, or whatever they were not using chemical engines. They moved in ways physics didn't explain. No sound, no lights, just smooth, terrifying silence. A second message arrived. This time there was no code to decipher. It played directly into Earth's communication systems. Every screen, every speaker, every satellite. A cold, mechanical voice said just one sentence. Earth has declared itself. That was it. No introduction. No demand, no explanation, just judgment. Leaders panicked. Armies were put on alert. Airspace over every major city was locked down. Fighter jets patrolled skies they knew were useless against something that could warp gravity. Some said Earth had done the right thing by sending the message. Others said it had been a mistake. But there was no taking it back now. People cried, prayed, rioted. Others just sat silently with their families, staring at the sky, waiting. Back at Project Horizon, Dr. Malik stood in front of the main viewing window. The stars were calm, beautiful even. No signs of war or ships or monsters, just space, the same as it had always been. She whispered to no one in particular. We warned them. I just hoped they heard us, but deep down she feared the truth. They had heard, they just didn't care. When the message from Earth reached the Galactic Empire's throne world, things did not go quietly. Far away in a massive room filled with glittering walls and towering statues, the Empire's High Council gathered. They were a group of men and women who ruled millions of star systems, but now faced something strange and unexpected. A tiny blue planet sending them a warning. The throne world, called Aurelian, was a place of great power and great pride. It floated in space like a jewel, surrounded by thousands of ships and satellites. Its halls were cold and serious. Every word spoken was measured. Every decision weighed with the lives of billions in mind. The council chamber was filled with heavy silence as the message from Earth was played again on the huge crystal screen. The leaders watched the words. We are aware of your presence. We are not a threat. We hope for peace. Some council members laughed quietly. To them, Earth was nothing but a small, backward world. A planet still struggling with its own survival. How could such a place send warnings to the Empire, which had ruled the stars for centuries? It was almost funny, but others were not so sure. Senator Calix, a thoughtful man with silver hair and sharp eyes, spoke up. He had spent years studying distant planets, watching civilizations grow and fall. He looked at the screen, then at his fellow council members. They are not threatening us, Calix said quietly. They want peace. We should listen. The room fell silent again. Most were not used to hearing words like peace in their meetings. The Empire had built its strength on power, on conquest. To many, weakness was a danger. The youngest commander in the council, General Varn, stood up. He was tall, with a stern face and a voice like thunder. Peace, this message is not a request. It is an insult. They know we are coming. They warn us to stay away. That is a challenge. He slammed his fist on the table. We should crush them before they grow stronger. Show them what happens to those who dare speak against the Empire. The other leaders nodded in agreement. The idea of a small planet daring to challenge the Empire was unacceptable. They wanted to send a message back, a message of power. But Calix shook his head. If we attack now, we may create an enemy that could unite against us. We know nothing about their technology or their people. If we can communicate, we may avoid war. The Emperor, a man who ruled from a throne of black obsidian, listened carefully. He was older now, but still feared no one. His eyes were cold as steel. For centuries, he had expanded the Empire's borders. He had seen planets fall and rebellions crushed. To him, Earth was just another world to conquer. But the Emperor was also proud. He wanted his name to be remembered forever. He did not like the idea of sending peace. To him, that was weakness. After a long pause, he spoke. Senator Calix is wise, but the Empire will not be mocked. They sent a warning. But we will show them what the Empire truly is. His voice echoed through the chamber. Prepare the fleets. We march to Earth. We will teach them respect. War will begin. The council members cheered. The decision was made. Back on Earth, the news was slow to arrive. Governments worked quietly, trying to understand what the Empire was planning. They had hoped for a peaceful contact. Now they faced the threat of war. The leaders of Earth gathered in a secure room deep underground. President Elena Ramirez, a calm woman in her late 40s, stood before them. She had seen the worst of humanity: war, famine, disaster, and knew how fragile peace could be. We sent a message of peace, she said softly, but the Empire chose war. We must prepare. She looked around the room. The military commanders nodded. Scientists and diplomats sat quietly, worried. Earth is not ready for a war against a galactic power, one general said. Our weapons are primitive compared to theirs. But we cannot surrender, Elena said firmly. We will fight for our survival, and we will do it together. A plan was quickly formed. Earth's countries put aside their old rivalries. Scientists worked day and night to understand the Empire's technology, from the data sent by Project Horizon. Engineers modified old weapons. People everywhere prepared for what was coming. As the Imperial fleets moved closer, Earth's night skies changed. Strange lights appeared. Satellites detected ships moving faster than anything ever seen. Fear grew in every city and town. Still, people tried to live their lives. Children went to school. Markets opened. Families gathered for meals. But beneath the surface, the tension was like a storm waiting to break. In a small town in India, a schoolteacher named Arjun watched the sky. He had 2 children and wondered if they would live to see the next sunrise. He told them stories about the stars, stories of heroes and hope. We don't know what is coming, he said, but we must be brave. We must stand together. In New York, a young scientist named Maya worked in a lab. She was part of the team trying to create defenses. She believed in humanity's strength. We are small, she told her colleagues, but we are smart. We have survived worse. We will find a way. Meanwhile, the Empire prepared for war. Their ships were massive, filled with weapons beyond Earth's understanding. Soldiers trained for battle, confident that victory was certain. But even among them, some had doubts. Senator Calix watched the preparations with sadness. He believed war was a mistake that would cost millions of lives. He secretly sent messages to Earth's leaders, warning them of the Empire's plans. He urged them to be ready, but also to look for ways to stop the fighting. His messages were risky. If the Emperor discovered them, Calix would be punished. But he believed it was worth the risk. When the first Imperial ships arrived near Earth's orbit, the world held its breath. The sky was filled with unfamiliar shapes, vast and silent. Earth's defense forces were small but determined. Fighter jets flew into space. Satellites tried to block the incoming ships. People watched from below, hoping for a miracle. The first shots were fired. Explosions lit the darkness. Cities shook. Lives were lost, but Earth's defenders fought back with everything they had. Old weapons were improved. Hidden bases fired lasers. The resistance was fierce. In the midst of the chaos, stories of courage spread. People risked their lives to save others. Strangers became friends. Families held tight to hope. One pilot, Lieutenant James Carter, flew his small ship through the enemy fleet, dodging blasts and saving civilians. He was tired but never gave up. A nurse named Lila cared for the wounded, her hands steady even when the hospital was full. She whispered to the frightened children, "We will be okay." The war had begun because the Empire refused to listen. Earth had sent a warning, a call for peace, but the Empire had chosen power over understanding. The galaxy was changing. Old ways of ruling were breaking, and humanity was ready to fight not just for survival, but for the right to be heard. The sky above Earth changed forever on the day the Empire's fleet arrived. It was a day people had feared but hoped would never come. The bright stars dimmed under the shadow of enormous ships, so large they blotted out the sun. Cities that had once bustled with life suddenly stood still, as if the whole world was holding its breath. At first, the Empire's ships didn't attack. They hovered quietly in orbit like dark, silent giants. From the ground, people watched with a mixture of awe and terror. Was this the moment Earth would surrender? Or was it the moment humanity would fight back? In the underground war room of Project Horizon, leaders and scientists stared at the live feeds from satellites. Dr. Asha Malik, the same woman who had first discovered the strange signals near Saturn, stood among them. Her eyes were tired, but her mind raced. The data showed the Empire's ships were unlike anything Earth had ever seen. Their weapons, their shields, their speed, it was beyond anything human technology could match. "We can't fight them with our current weapons," she said, voice steady but low. "We need to think differently." The generals around her nodded grimly. They knew this was true. Earth had no chance in a straight fight. Outside, the cities prepared. Air raid sirens wailed. People were told to stay inside, to find shelter. Schools closed. Hospitals filled up with those who wanted to help but knew the coming days would be hard. But even in the face of such power, Earth refused to break. In New York City, a group of engineers and hackers gathered in an old subway station turned secret lab. They called themselves the Resonance. They weren't soldiers. They weren't politicians. They were ordinary people who believed that technology, creativity, and courage could save their world. Maya, the young scientist from before, led the group. She stood in front of a glowing table, covered with blueprints and circuit boards. "The Empire relies on advanced neural systems to control their ships," she explained. "If we can disrupt those, we might slow them down." Her team worked day and night designing a virus, a kind of digital weapon that could invade the Empire's systems and shut them down from within. It was risky, dangerous, and untested, but it was the best chance Earth had. Far away on a quiet farm in Kenya, a man named Kofi watched the sky with his children. They sat around a small fire, the stars above clear and bright despite the distant glow of war. Kofi was a farmer, a simple man who had never imagined he would be part of something so big. But now he felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. His village had sent food and supplies to the cities. They had built shelters for refugees. "We may be small," he told his children, "but we are strong. When the world is dark, the smallest light can shine the brightest." His words spread through the villages by word of mouth. Across Earth, people found hope in simple acts, sharing food, helping neighbors, standing together. As the first battles began in space, Earth's forces fought with determination. Fighter jets darted through the blackness, dodging laser blasts from the Empire's ships. Missiles exploded, lighting up the darkness like fireworks. The Empire's weapons were deadly, but Earth's pilots were fierce. Lieutenant James Carter was one of the best. Flying his battered fighter, he led a squadron against a large Imperial cruiser. The odds were against them, but James refused to give up. "We fight not because we want war," he told his team over the radio, "but because we want to live." The battle was brutal. Ships exploded on both sides. The sounds of engines and weapons filled the void of space. But James's squadron managed to strike a critical blow to the cruiser's shield system, forcing it to retreat. Back on Earth, the virus Maya's team created was ready. It was sent into space on a small, fast drone designed to sneak past the Empire's defenses. The world waited as the drone disappeared into the stars. Hours later, the first effects were seen. The Empire's ships started experiencing strange failures. Systems shut down. Communications dropped. Pilots reported their ships acting strangely, as if controlled by an unseen force. The virus was working, but the Empire was not defeated yet. The Emperor, furious at the setbacks, ordered a new strategy. They would not just attack Earth from space. They would strike where it hurt the most, on the planet's surface. Massive bombers dropped weapons designed to break cities. New York, Shanghai, Lagos, major centers were hit hard. The destruction was terrible. Millions were injured or killed. In the Amazon rainforest, a secret Imperial weapon detonated, causing a massive explosion that destroyed thousands of square miles. The ecological damage was so great that it set off floods, storms, and fires around the world. Earth was hurting, but it was still standing. In the chaos, new heroes emerged. Lila, the nurse from before, worked tirelessly in hospitals filled with the wounded. She comforted children who had lost everything. Her hands were steady, her heart strong. In Russia, a retired engineer named Boris led a team to repair damaged power grids, risking his life to keep lights on in freezing temperatures. In Brazil, activists fought to protect the remaining forests from further destruction. These people were not soldiers or politicians. They were ordinary humans doing extraordinary things. Even as the Empire's war machines moved closer, Earth's people learned to fight back in new ways. Old rivalries and borders faded as humanity united in a common cause. In a secret meeting beneath the ruins of Paris, leaders from every continent agreed. They would use every resource, every skill and every idea to defend their home. Asha spoke at the meeting, her voice clear. This is not just a fight for Earth. It is a fight for the future of every living thing. Meanwhile, within the Empire's own ranks, doubts grew. Senator Galactic, still watching, saw how the war was tearing both sides apart. He sent secret messages to Earth's leaders, hoping to find a way to stop the bloodshed. But his warnings were ignored by many in the council, who believed that total victory was the only option. Galactic's heart was heavy. He feared that this war would leave nothing but ashes behind. As the months passed, the war settled into a terrible rhythm. Space battles, city bombings, secret sabotage. Every day brought loss, but also moments of courage. People learned to survive in a world changed by war. They adapted. They hoped. In a small village in Norway, a group of children made a promise beneath the northern lights. They would grow up to build a better world. A world where warnings were heard, where peace was chosen over war. And somewhere, far away on Aurelian, Senator Galactic whispered to himself, may they find the strength to carry on. The war had begun because the Empire chose power over peace. But on Earth, something stronger was growing, a spirit of hope, unity, and resilience. The stars had sent their warning. Earth had answered with courage, and the fight was far from over. The war had dragged on longer than anyone expected. Earth was no longer just a small blue planet fighting for survival. It had become a symbol, a stubborn flame burning brightly against the vast darkness of the Empire. But that flame was flickering, and many wondered how long it could last. In the cities, life was a mix of fear and determination. People had learned to live with the sound of sirens and distant explosions. Schools were turned into shelters. Streets once filled with laughter were now places of caution and quiet. In London, an old man named Thomas sat on a bench in a park that had survived the worst of the bombings. He watched children playing near a broken fountain, their faces smeared with dirt but their eyes full of hope. Thomas had been a soldier long ago, and he understood what the world was facing. But what struck him most was how strong people had become. They fight not just for today, he said to a young woman sitting beside him. They fight for tomorrow. Across the Atlantic Ocean, a team of scientists in Brazil was working on a new plan. Led by Dr. Maria Silva, they had spent months studying the virus that Maya's team had sent to attack the Empire's ships. It worked better than expected, but it was not enough. We need something stronger, Maria said. Something that can make a real difference. Her team proposed a daring idea. Instead of just attacking the Empire's ships, they wanted to build a network of satellites equipped with advanced technology, devices that could detect enemy movements, disrupt their weapons, and protect Earth's communication. It was an ambitious plan, and resources were scarce. But the Global Council agreed. People donated money, time, and hope. Engineers and volunteers around the world worked day and night to make the satellites a reality. Meanwhile, in the Empire's capital, the mood was changing. The Emperor's anger at the resistance was growing. The losses suffered by the fleet were unexpected, and many began to question the war's purpose. Senator Galactic, still working in secret, saw a chance to change things. He had gathered a small group of like-minded officials who believed that peace was still possible. We must send a delegation to Earth, Galactic said in a hidden meeting. We cannot win by force alone. We need to talk. It was a dangerous idea. The Emperor had banned any contact with Earth besides war messages. But Galactic believed that risking everything was better than watching billions die. On Earth, President Elena Ramirez received Galactic's secret message with shock and hope. She gathered her closest advisors. This could be our chance, she said. A chance to stop the fighting, to save lives. But the generals were divided. Some saw the offer as a trick. Others feared it might be a trap. Elena knew that trusting the Empire was risky, but she also knew that the war was destroying everything. If there was even a small chance to end it, they had to take it. So a small group of diplomats, scientists, and soldiers prepared to leave Earth for the first time since the war began. They boarded a specially designed ship, equipped with the new satellite technology and guarded by Earth's best pilots. Among them was Dr. Asha Malik, who carried the hopes of all humanity. She had seen the worst and the best of what people could do. She believed that even in the darkest times there was a chance for peace. As the ship left Earth's atmosphere, people around the world watched and prayed. The mission was not just for Earth, but for all who dreamed of a future without war. The journey to the Empire's capital was tense. The diplomats knew they were walking into a dangerous place. They prepared for negotiations, but also for battle. When the ship arrived at Aurelian, it was greeted with cold silence. The massive ships of the Empire loomed overhead like guardians of a fortress. The diplomats entered the council chamber, where the Emperor sat surrounded by his advisors. His eyes were hard, but not without curiosity. Galactic stood beside the Emperor, ready to speak. "Earth sends greetings," Galactic said. "We come with a message of hope." For hours they talked. The diplomats shared stories of Earth's struggle, of people fighting not just for survival but for a future where peace was possible. They spoke of unity, courage, and the desire to learn from one another. The Emperor listened but said little. At last he spoke. "You are brave to come here," he said. "But bravery alone does not win wars." He proposed a test, a way to prove whether Earth was strong enough to survive. "If you succeed, I will consider peace," he said. "If you fail, the Empire's rule will continue." The test was simple but deadly. Earth's representatives were given a mission to retrieve an ancient artifact from a dangerous planet on the edge of the Empire's territory. It was said to hold knowledge that could change the course of the war. The diplomats accepted the challenge. Back on their ship, they prepared for the journey. Maya worked with the pilots, sharing her knowledge of the Empire's technology. Asha studied old maps and legends, hoping to find clues. The mission was risky. The planet was known for its storms, dangerous creatures, and ancient traps. As they landed, the team felt the weight of history around them. The air was thick with tension. Every step forward was cautious, every shadow watched. They moved through ruins covered in strange symbols, signs of a civilization long gone but still powerful. Suddenly they were attacked, not by soldiers, but by automated guardians left to protect the artifact. The team fought bravely, using their skills and technology to survive. In the end, they found the artifact, a small device that pulsed with light and energy. Returning to the Empire, the team presented the artifact. The Emperor examined it closely. The artifact contained knowledge about the galaxy's history and the power of cooperation between worlds. It was a reminder that strength came not just from weapons but from understanding and unity. The Emperor was silent for a long time. Then finally he spoke. "You have passed the test," he said. "Perhaps there is more to this war than conquest." He agreed to a ceasefire and invited Earth's leaders to negotiate a peace treaty. Back on Earth, the news was met with disbelief and cautious hope. After years of fighting and loss, peace seemed possible, but the world knew that trust was fragile. The road ahead would be difficult. The wounds of war would take time to heal. Still, for the first time, people dared to dream of a future where the stars were not a place of war, but a place of friendship. In a small village, Kofi looked up at the sky and smiled. "We sent a warning," he said. "They heard us. And maybe, just maybe, the war was finally over." After the ceasefire was declared, the people of Earth felt a strange mix of relief and worry. Relief because the endless fighting had stopped for now. Worry because peace had never been tested before between Earth and the Empire. Trust was fragile, and the wounds from war were still fresh. In the cities, life began to change slowly. The sounds of explosions were replaced by quiet rebuilding efforts. People worked together to clear rubble, fix broken roads, and restore electricity. The world was tired but hopeful. In a small town in Japan, an elderly woman named Hana helped neighbors clean up their homes. She had lived through many wars, and she understood the cost of conflict. "Peace is not just the absence of war," Hana told a group of children playing nearby. "It is something we must build every day with kindness and courage." Her words spread quietly from town to town. Across the globe, people began to see peace as a new kind of work, something they had to protect. Meanwhile, the diplomats who had gone to the Empire were busy with talks that could change the fate of the galaxy. The negotiations were slow and difficult. The Empire was proud and powerful, and Earth was still small and vulnerable. But both sides wanted to avoid war again. President Elena Ramirez led Earth's team. She was strong and calm, listening carefully to every word from the Empire's representatives. She knew that peace meant compromise, but she also knew Earth could not lose its freedom. In the meeting rooms on Aurelian, they discussed everything. from trade agreements to cultural exchanges, from technology sharing to rules about military presence. Senator Calix, who had pushed for peace, worked quietly behind the scenes. He believed that if Earth and the Empire could learn from each other, the future might be better than anyone had imagined. Back on Earth, people were curious about the Empire's world. What was life like on Aurelian? How did they live among the stars? Asha, Malik, and Maya were invited to join cultural exchange programs. They traveled to the Empire's capital, meeting scientists and artists. They shared stories about Earth, its history, its people, its struggles, and listened to tales of the Empire's past. The more they learned, the more they saw how different yet similar both worlds were. Both had fears, hopes, dreams. One evening, Maya stood on a balcony overlooking the Empire's city lights, thinking about everything she had seen. She realized that peace was not just about treaties and politics. It was about understanding. But peace was not easy. Some in the Empire wanted war to continue. They saw Earth as weak and believed that giving up would make the Empire less powerful. On Earth, too, some people were angry. They had lost family and friends. They wanted revenge, not talks. President Elena knew she had to keep the world calm. "Peace is a promise," she said in a speech to millions. "It is a promise we make to each other and to future generations. It will not be easy, but it is worth it." Her words gave hope, but also reminded people that peace needed work. During this time, many ordinary people found new ways to connect across the stars. In a small village in Kenya, Kofi helped organize a group of farmers to send messages and gifts to people on the Empire's world. They sent seeds, handmade crafts, and letters. In return, they received stories and art from Aurelian. It was a small act, but it built bridges. In schools on Earth, children learned about the stars and the Empire's culture. They dreamed of a future where humans and other beings could explore space together, not as enemies, but as friends. Even the soldiers who had fought in the war found new purpose. Lieutenant James Carter, once a fierce pilot in space battles, now worked with peacekeepers, helping to rebuild damaged areas and train new generations in how to avoid conflict. He often thought about the battles he had fought, the friends he had lost. "War changes people," he said quietly, "but peace can change them back." As time passed, the peace treaty between Earth and the Empire grew stronger. They worked on joint projects, sharing technology to heal the environment, exploring space together, and protecting smaller planets from harm. New treaties were signed. Trade routes opened. People traveled between worlds. It was not perfect. There were still disagreements, misunderstandings, and moments of fear. But the idea of war slowly faded. In a quiet moment, Senator Calix looked at the stars and smiled. The choice had been difficult and the cost had been high. But he believed humanity and the Empire had taken the first step toward a new future. The warning Earth sent had been heard. The message was clear. Peace was possible even when war seemed inevitable. And in the end, it was people, ordinary people, who made it real. After years of war and struggle, peace had finally taken root between Earth and the Galactic Empire. It wasn't perfect peace, not yet. There were still challenges, fears, and deep wounds to heal. But for the first time in a long time, people could look up at the stars without fear. Life on Earth was changing. Cities were slowly rebuilding. Gardens grew where rubble once lay. The sky, once filled with warships and explosions, now held peaceful satellites and new explorers setting out into space. People everywhere felt a new kind of hope. One born not from weapons or power, but from understanding and connection. In a small town in South America, a boy named Carlos stood at the edge of a field staring up at the night sky. He was no soldier or scientist, just a simple boy with big dreams. "Will we ever visit the stars?" he asked his grandmother, who sat beside him on an old wooden bench. His grandmother smiled, her eyes filled with memories. "One day, Carlos. People are learning to live together now, not just on Earth, but with others beyond our world. Maybe you will be one of those who travels to the stars." Carlos's heart filled with excitement. The stories of war felt like something from a distant past. The future was bright, full of possibilities. Across the ocean, in a rebuilt school in Europe, children gathered to hear a special guest, a soldier named Lieutenant James Carter. He was now a teacher, sharing stories not of battle but of peace. War changes everything, James said gently. But peace changes people even more. It teaches us how to listen, how to forgive, and how to build something better together. The children listened carefully. They didn't remember the war themselves, but they knew its cost from the stories their parents told. James hoped that by teaching them about peace, the next generation would never have to fight. On the planet Aurelian, the Empire was also changing. The Emperor had stepped down, choosing to leave the future of his people in the hands of those who believed in peace. Senator Calix had become a leader, working to heal the divisions within the Empire. He visited Earth often, helping to strengthen the friendship between worlds. One day, during a ceremony celebrating the new alliance, Calix spoke with quiet pride. "We were once enemies," he said, "but we found a way to listen to each other. We learned that strength is not in weapons, but in understanding. Together we will explore the galaxy, protect the innocent, and build a future where peace is the strongest power of all." Meanwhile, on Earth, scientists and engineers continued to work together with their new friends from the Empire. Together they built powerful machines to clean the air, restore oceans, and heal the land. In the great cities, parks blossomed where once there had been destruction. People planted trees, held festivals, and celebrated life. Asha Malik, now a global ambassador for peace and science, traveled the world sharing her story. She reminded people of the warning Earth had sent and the choice that had changed everything. War was not the only path, she told crowds. We chose hope, courage, and unity, and that choice saved us. Yet not everything was easy. Some old fears and doubts remained. Some people found it hard to forgive, hard to trust. In a quiet village in Asia, a woman named May struggled with the memories of the war. She had lost family and friends. The pain was deep. But through community gatherings and stories shared across borders, May began to see the faces of those who once seemed so different. She met people from the Empire who had suffered too, who longed for peace just like her. One day, May looked up at the sky and whispered, "Maybe we are not so different after all." Young people like Carlos and many others across Earth dreamed of the stars. They studied science, technology, and languages. They prepared for a future where Earth would travel beyond its own skies. Joined by friends from distant worlds, new spaceships were built, not war machines, but ships for exploration, research, and connection. In a workshop in Australia, a group of teenagers worked on a small spacecraft designed to carry explorers to the outer planets. Their leader, a girl named Zara, smiled as the ship took shape. "We want to see what's out there," she said. "But more than that, we want to meet new friends and learn their stories." Back on Aurelian, children played in parks where Earth's flowers had been planted. They learned about Earth's culture, music, and history. They sang songs of peace and hope. One day, a young boy named Jalen asked his mother, "Will there ever be war again?" She smiled and held him close. "If we remember the past and choose kindness, no. Peace is in our hands." As years passed, the alliance between Earth and the Empire became a shining example to other worlds in the galaxy. Together, they formed a council to help planets solve conflicts without violence. They sent aid to struggling planets, shared knowledge freely, and welcomed travelers with open arms. The stars no longer belonged to just one race or empire. They belonged to all who wished to explore, learn, and grow. In a quiet moment, Asha stood on a hill overlooking her hometown. The sun was setting, painting the sky with warm colors. She thought back to the day Earth sent its warning, a cry for peace in the vast silence of space. It had been a long, hard journey. So many had suffered. But in the end, humanity's true strength had shown, not in weapons, but in the power to hope, to forgive, and to unite. Asha smiled softly. "This is only the beginning," she whispered. "The story of peace will grow with every new day." And so Earth's warning became a message of hope. The Galactic Empire, once a force of war, chose a new path. Together they faced the future, not as enemies, but as partners. The stars, once a place of fear, had become a place of dreams, and the people of Earth, with courage and heart, showed the galaxy what it truly meant to be strong.